Hello, welcome back to the Reading Mama. My name is Heather and I have another author spotlight for you today. Today it is I don't know if she's considered an indie author, possibly. She is a Christian historical fiction romance with a bit of mystery suspense thrown in. So I want to talk to you about Michelle Shocklee. This is a new author to me this year. I have read 4 of her, I'm trying to look here, 5, 6, 7, 8 books that she has written. No, I've read 3 of them. I lied, sorry. And so I thought I'd give a little bit of what my take is on her and why I am going to continue reading this author. So she has a series that I know nothing about, okay? It's got 2 books. I don't know if it's going to continue. It seems like it was like her beginning writing. And then she has some standalone novels. And her standalone novels that I've read have followed a very specific pattern. They're dual timelines, and they will have a more modern setting, and then they will have a very historical setting. They take place in America, and they deal with a lot of conflicts of the ages and big picture, a lot of grief, bitterness, and coming to terms with those kind of things. She is a Christian author, and I think she does just an amazing job of adding in Christian faith and specifically the gospel through very natural ways. She does not beat you over the head with it. It just like naturally fits into the story and into the characters. And it is a subplot, but it is in there. And I absolutely love the way she does it. It's very rewarding. So I'm going to tell you about the books I've read of hers and then give you a quick synopsis, if I can, of the others because I'm using my computer and I'm not a tech person. So the first book I read from her was The Women of Oak Ridge. Nope, scratch that. The first book I read was All We Thought We Knew. All We Thought We Knew follows 2 timelines. And I'm going to try to keep this as spoiler-free as possible. Forgive me if I spoil something because it has been a while since I read it. It was a few months ago. So all that we thought we knew, we start out with the timeline, and I don't know any of the characters' names. I am terrible at character names. But the main character is taking place, I want to say in the late 70s. It's happening during Vietnam. And she has returned home after a long absence where she has been living out west and just living a life of sin. I mean, she's been in a commune. She's been sleeping around. She's been, at least it sounds that way. I can't remember. Maybe it was like she was moving that way and she stopped. I don't remember. Anyways, I digress. She was into alcohol and drugs and just her life was not good. And she knew it wasn't good. She knew things were just bad. She was dealing with bitterness and grief and stress. Her brother went off to Vietnam, which she hated because she was against the war. Then he died and she just could not come to terms with that. Now she finds out her mother is dying of cancer. She rushes home to try to spend time with her, try to just figure everything out. And all of this is going on, and she's dealing with all this bitterness, grief, and resentment that she has had just building and building and building for years. Then we have another timeline where we're in a World War II era, and I believe it's in Tennessee, that we're following a family who is a woman who is widowed. She had been very recently married and then widowed, and now she's working on a fort, and she starts working with the German POWs who are coming in, and she starts to practice English with one of them. And yes, so we have a romance problem going on, but we also have all the things that are going on with POWs, with Germans in America. You get an insight. You also get his take on things, the German POW, and how he ended up there, because he is not actually, he wasn't a soldier in Germany. He was in America studying and trying to become an American citizen, hopefully. And he was rounded up and stuck in the camp. So you get all of that going on. And then there are some little mysterious subplots going on along with that, trying to figure out what is really happening in the camps. Why are people acting certain ways? And you have just all those little things that you get with war and war stories and things like that, where everybody, not everybody, but somebody always has another secret side that you don't know about. And so you have those going on, and then the stories mesh towards the end, and you have inklings, but you don't know for sure till the end. And it was very well written, just beautiful, and I was crying my eyes out. I remember listening to this one on the way to taking my kids to a choir competition, and it was just like, oh, bawling. And I'm like, okay, time to get out of the car and go to choir. But it was a phenomenal book. Then I listened to and I can't remember which order I did it in. I think I did Count the Night of Stars, I think is what it is. I'll put a picture here. And this one has dual timeline, and I can't remember what the other timeline is. That's terrible. No, I do remember. So you're talking about the Maxwell House, I think, again in Tennessee. And which is like the coffee, but it was a hotel apparently. And so you have the people who are running the hotel, I want to say in the 80s-ish time period. I could be wrong. And you have the family who lives there and is managing it, and they're dealing with grief. And you have a son who's, I believe, autistic. And he's older, and the caring for him, and she's trying to balance all these things. And a mystery revolves around one of the people in their care as they start to uncover her scrapbook and other things. And then you follow another storyline of a girl who was there during the bicentennial. I don't know. There was something in Nashville where it was like the World's Fair kind of thing. And at the Maxwell House, was one of the places that character stayed, and she was very forward thinking. Family treats her like a spinster and is trying to push her off on somebody who she's like, no, I don't, there's something not great about it. And it gets into the seedy underbelly of the late 1800s. I believe it was like post Civil War, I want to say. I don't remember the timeline exactly, but and it gets very serious, very dark for some of the parts, and it was intense. It was much more intense, I felt, than All We Thought We Knew, which was a different kind of intensity. There we were dealing with health and prejudices. Here we were dealing with kidnapping and extortion and not extortion, but selling women into brothels and things. And it just went a totally different direction than I thought it was going to go. And then you eventually, Maxwell House is the connecting point of the story, but you see later on how other ways that they connect. And it was just beautifully, I always love trying to guess how she's going to bring them together and how it's going to connect, because there's the obvious connection, often location, but then there is the other, how are the characters going to meld together in the end. And I really love that. So Count the Night of Stars was much more intense, but I really did enjoy the story. You've got a Civil War era, and then late 80s there in Tennessee. All We Thought We Knew, you're dealing with Vietnam era and World War II era. And then I read The Women of Oak Ridge, which was a more modern setting, and then I want to say 2000s-ish, and then maybe it was 90s. It might have been 90s actually. And then World War II era. So The Women of Oak Ridge is talking about Oak Ridge, which was one of the places that people went to build the atomic bomb. What were they doing? It was not uranium. Was it the uranium? I think it's the uranium. They were creating the uranium for that to ship off. And it was a secret city, so everybody was, you're under contract, no talk, gag order, all that stuff. And that's one of the stories, is talking about one of the women who worked there and all the things that happened with her. And it gets kind of intense because, you were dealing with some espionage and things of what is going on in those secret cities during that time, which I have read a couple other books about the atomic city down in New Mexico and things like that, at Los Alamos, and very similar kind of situations going on. But you get it from that girl's perspective. Well, then in the future perspective, in the 90s-ish perspective, it's the same woman, because you've got the same name, Mabel. And you have her niece coming to check on her. She's in her 50s, 60s, I think now. And she is going to interview her and the different people who have been there for part of her PhD thesis to see, how did keeping secrets so long, how has that affected you long term? What was it like there? What was life like in this secret city, and all these things? And things get discovered and uncovered, and you've got the girl working with her a friend that she makes that's a cop who's trying to uncover some of these things and figure out more what life was like. And then at the same time, you have what was actually happening during the time at Oak Ridge when it was a functional government city, and all of the things that were happening behind the scenes and the trials and problems that ensued. And then it's kind of neat because you see her later on and how that all affected her. And it is sad, but it is still beautiful, and I loved it. Other books that I wanted to read from her. So Under the Tulip Tree, which came out in 2020. And this one follows a 16-year-old, 16-year-old Lorena Leland's dreams in the Great Depression. And then you have Frankie, who recounts her life as a slave. And so those are going to come together. So that sounds interesting. And then there's also Appalachian Song, which, like, I've seen it everywhere this year. It came out in 2023, so I'm kind of surprised that this is the year that everybody picked it up. But you have Birdie Jenkins, who's in the 40s, and then you have 30 years later, Walker Wiley and Reese Chandler. I don't know. You have some different people. So you've got 40s and then 70s again, and it's taking place in Appalachia. So that's interesting. And then she has coming out early next year, The Poet of Moonshine Hill, which is going to be in the 30s and then the 80s. And so I'm just giving you the time frames because I really don't like to go into books anymore knowing very much about the story. If it's an author I trust, I'm like, just give me the book. Just give me the book. I don't want to know anything about it. And that's who Michelle Shocklee is. She's one of the authors, and I'm like, that's the one I want to read. Now, I don't know if I'll read her original series duology. The Women of Earth, very much just historical fiction. Not really up my alley at this point in time, depending on what it's about. But her newer ones, her standalone novels, I'm very interested in. Like, that's somebody I trust. I really love it. If you're somebody who's reading her and you tag her on Instagram, she will interact with you, which is also awesome. I love that they are clean. There's no swearing, no spice. Like I said, you know, there's some references to sexual things, like the brothel, like somebody trying to take advantage of a woman. Those things are mentioned in some of them, but nothing is ever graphic. It's never explicit. No swearing, which is always a boon, especially when you get into books that are taking place in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. For whatever reason, we know, those books set in those time periods seem to just be prolific with swearing. So finding books that are not is like, woohoo. And so I highly recommend Michelle Shocklee. If you have questions about the 3 books I've read, drop it below. If you have read Michelle Shocklee, tell me what your favorite book by her is. And thank you so much for watching, and have a blessed day.